Okay, guys. So, welcome to week number two. This should be a little bit easier than week number one. Not quite as much stuff to wade through. We do have a lot of content to go through, but we don't have all of those other assignments going on. So, it should be a little bit easier for you. I hope it's a little bit easier for you. First week is kind of my week to give you a shock to the senses and start to get you into the flow of things. First off the bat, this week we will be switching for the video discussion. We'll be switching. So, as we will do every week. So, group two, and you should know which group you're in by now, but group two, you will be searching for and posting the video for the week as well as your commentary, about 200, 300 words. And that needs to be done by Wednesday midnight. Group one, you have until Sunday to respond. Okay. Um, Keep in mind, I've had people ask, do I just need to respond to one? Yeah, but again, keep in mind we're trying to grow as a group. So if you can watch more than one, give some comment and expand the conversation. That's what we're really hoping for is to work on conversations. So that's the first thing. Second thing, and there was an announcement along these lines. We did take a vote as to how the class calendar was going to work on this semester. And then by an overwhelming majority, the decision has been made that we will work through the Thanksgiving break to give us that extra week 9 to wrap things up, give yourself a little bit of a buffer, give you some extra focus on the other classes if you need it. So I will be posting the assignments from Thanksgiving onwards in the next day or two. That'll be reflected in our class calendar and will also be reflected in the syllabus. So the syllabus will be updated. So there's where you are. This week, we're going to be looking at chapter 2. It goes from page 34 to 69. So it's about 35 pages. For those of you who may not have been able to get your hands on the book yet, don't panic. You will be having some work build up on you. But again, since there is no penalty for late assignments, you can get your hands on the book a week late and still be able to catch up. You'll have a little bit of extra work to do, but it's not insurmountable. You can do this. Okay. So don't panic yet. And we'll move on there from there. So with that being said, let's take a look at the materials for this week. Okay. So this is our, excuse me, and I'll also apologize. I'll probably be coughing a lot. I've come down with something, and I'm just can't shake the cough. So that's what we're dealing with today. So we're going to be looking at basically what information technology, information systems in the business environment and how they are being used nowadays. And this is really kind of playing right into my wheelhouse. This is what I did for 15 years or so. Yeah, I did the repair stuff. Yeah, I've done programming. I've done web development. But my real strength, what people really pulled me in for, was to deal with what we're talking about here. So this may run a little bit long. You may want to pause this video right now and go get yourself something to drink and a snack so you can listen to this. I'll try not to go off on too many asides, but I'm Irish. Sorry, it's just the way I am. So we'll be looking at business processes. We'll be looking at re-engineering and business process improvement as well as business process management. So basically, instead of talking about the different aspects of technology, like programming or networking or things like that, which we will do in later chapters. What I refer to as my propeller head friends, my guys who are in the weeds making technology work. We're going to be looking at working with technology. Those are really the two camps I divide um, technology into. You have the people who make technology work, so our programmers, our networking people, our hardware people, the people who make all of those things work as seamlessly as possible. And then we have people who work with technology, and this is what we're going to be looking at today: is people working with technology. So we'll be looking at that today. I'll be going over the PowerPoint slides. I'm going to skim over some of them because you'll get more information from them in the book. And again, I don't want to go too long. We also have this week's tech guide, which is on the second tab. We'll be looking at application software software issues, system softwares, and application software. Basically, the three groups of types of software. We're moving away from hardware we were last week, looking at the different operating systems and how things work. I'll probably touch a little bit on that today as well. And then you have your PowerPoint lesson or project, which you can get from the LinkedIn Learning. We have the link to the video is in the slide over here. So that's there for you. Do want you to make sure you are using PowerPoint and Office 365 on all of these projects for the next few weeks. Don't try and do this in Google Slides. You will find using PowerPoint is much more intuitive and much more powerful. PowerPoint is definitely the standard for business. So you're going to want to, whether you're going into any kind of business, we're going to be making a presentation, even if you're going into to a business where you're, I'm not going to use this. I'm working with my hands. Well, you're going to have to make a pitch someday, and if you're making a pitch to a businessman, they want PowerPoint. So get familiar with it. This is what we want to be working in. And again, PowerPoint is much more intuitive. It is what Google Slides dreams to be when it grows up. So go ahead and get that project done there. So with that being said, let's take a look at our PowerPoint for this week. Okay, so this is Introduction to Information Systems. Okay, I went to the wrong screen. Change the right screen. 1 second, guys. My technology has failed me. Sorry, you need to be over here. Okay. Let's go back to the other screen here. Okay. So this is Introduction to Information Systems, which is our book. Our learning objectives are, my screens here. Pardon me, I did not test this out beforehand, which is why one of the things you should always do is test your technology before you have to use it, so that you're not stuck doing what I'm stuck doing, which is verifying. Okay. So we're going to discuss ways in which informal systems enable cross-functional business processes and business process for a single functional area. Basically, what this is coming down to is we're going to look at some different ways that technology is applied in the workplace. So we're going to discuss the difference between business process reengineering, which is basically doing a top-down review of how things go and doing a complete revamp, as opposed to business process improvement, which is a different process altogether. We're going to be looking at how you can use information systems, information technology to respond to different kinds of business pressures. And then we're going to look at some competitive forces and how organizations use ITIS to work with that. This is your chapter outline. So you'll discover that as you go through. We have an opening case. I really do recommend that you read these cases to see how these organizations responded to different pressures in their environment and their business environment, and how information systems helped with that. So business processes. Business process is real simple. It is how a business works, how it does things. And it applies to just about everything. You don't just if you're in a large corporation, you're not just this thing happens and we flail around until we find out how it works or how we do it. Businesses will have a set of processes that they deal with. This is how we do this function. This is how we do that function. And it does tend to work outside of what we refer to as silos. When you're talking about IT and IS, you're talking about crossing departments, different things get done. Um, so, for example, when you get hired, it's not done just by the department. You also involve HR, you involve legal, you involve administration. It crosses platforms. A business process involves three elements: things coming in, so the inputs, the resources that are available, and the outputs. So, if you recommend when we were talking, if you recognize when we were talking about computer systems and what makes something a computer, two of those are included in these processes: the inputs and the outputs. And then how the resources are applied is where we're going to be discussing the role of IT and IS. Efficiency versus effectiveness. This is something that not a whole lot of people get, and it's crucial in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different aspects of business, that you understand efficiency versus effectiveness, and what those terms mean in a business world. And I've got some examples of that. Okay. Sorry. This is the slide I was just talking about. I go riffing off of. So there you go. Um, Here we've got some tables from the book. We This is examples of business processes, different things that businesses do, um, and the processes that they do. These again, managing post sale follow up in marketing, how that is done. Do you call your customer immediately? Do you wait 2 days? What forms, what data do you pull back from the customer? What questions do you ask them? These are all part of the business marketing business processes. Financial systems all have that well as well. Here's some more: productions and operation. How do things work? What we refer to as a workflow. You go from one step to the next step to the next step, um, and how that is all working. How training works, the email policy, and how that's applied. All of these things are business processes. And as you go into larger businesses, the more formal they are. When we're talking cross functional processes, this is where no single area is responsible for everything. We're working across different departments in a collaborative and cooperative way, ideally. Um, so, for example, we'll show an example here. Here's an example of ordering an e-ticket for an airline. Okay, if you think about it, there are multiple processes going on. What we refer to in involving multiple departments and multiple functions, what are often referred to as silos. Okay, a silo. If you think about a grain silo, it's self-contained. Everything works fine within the silo, and then you have the neighboring silo, and they don't really talk to each other. One of the advantages of using ITIS is we form bridges where those silos interact, and if it's done well, it can work easily. But here we have an example. We have the traveler, we have the airline. The traveler, they're focused on what they have. They've got to plan the trips. They're gonna check the flights. They're gonna check and see if a seat's available. If it is one, then it's going to order a ticket, and that kicks off a whole other thing. Or if they're going to reserve a ticket, um, sorry, not reserve. That's another process. So once they kick the submit a ticket order, that kicks off another process, and then each one can go to different areas. So this is what's referred to as a flow chart, um, and it maps how the process works. And you can see different areas where, okay, so they're going to reserve the seats. Okay, well that's keeping an inventory of what seats are available, and the customer chooses what seat they want based on the database that controls what seats have not been spoken for. The price is determined by the flight and the seat and all of the rest of that. If they're using a credit card, okay, now we're kicking off a different process that goes into finance, bringing in an entirely different thing. Once that, then we come bring that back, and once the card's paid for, then we confirm the flight. We notify the traveler. So again, a lot of different things going on to make what looks like, from the customer's point of view, a very smooth process. We want it to be a smooth process. It isn't always. So information system and business processes. IS's role, IT, IS, IT, which are pretty much interchangeable. Um, eh, is vital nowadays to streamlining and making them both more efficient and more effective. Um, they help execute the process. So, in other words, an articulate example that it is the ITIS department that is building the website, managing the website, that is mapping all of that workflow and how the ticket process works. It's capturing and storing the data. You know, it's providing the seats, what seats are available to the customer. Well, first of all, it's providing what flights are available. Then it's providing what seats are available. Then the customer makes their choice. Okay, now that's being updated, and then it's notifying and monitoring the process the entire time to make sure that information is going well. NASCAR uses IT in its pre-race inspection. This is your first case scenario. So read through that, get a good idea of how NASCAR, which you would not think would be using um, much technology, actually is and using it quite well. Um, and in this case, it helps by informing employees what when they have a task that needs to be completed. Require the data, and it's providing a means to complete the task. So you know, not just the calendar, but also the way that the task can be completed. Um, okay, we are also capturing and storing process data. And you mentioned that was one of the three hallmarks of our workflow. You know, dates, times, product numbers, quantities, all of these things in inventory. Are they available? IS capture and store process data. And capturing and storing process data provides immediate real time feedback. If you guys will think back, some of you are a little young to have been understanding what was going on, but during the pandemic, when it first hit, a lot of store shelves were going empty. There was a supply chain problem. Um, that was actually a result of efficiencies in the market. It was they got caught. What used to happen back when I was a kid was that you had your store shelves, and then in the back room you had more stock. Okay, so you always had stuff in the back rooms to fill the shelves. So what ended up happening, and actually it was Dell Computers that started this, was what's called just-in-time inventory. Once we got inventories, we got more computerized. We were able to know in real time how many of any particular item was on the shelf. And when you got to a certain number, an order would automatically be triggered. So if I had, Captain Crunch cereal and it was in my system that when we were down to 10 boxes on the shelves, a new order was placed so that the inventory would automatically be refreshed. When you have that going on, you have less need to have things in inventory. You have less need to have things in the warehouse for restocking. So the stock rooms got smaller and smaller because we got to rely more and more on just in time inventorying. And then when the pandemic hit and the shipping got affected, we went into lockdown. The trucks weren't rolling. Well, there was no inventory to stock the shelves. There was no inventory in the back room to fill the shelves. So that's where we started seeing where just-in-time inventory and just-in-time ordering, that efficiency that we realized was coming back to bite us. So that was an example of where that efficiency was not being was the hole in the efficiency project was shown, and we're still kind of suffering from that now with our supply chain issues and shipping issues. It's still we're still getting some of those effects. Okay, monitoring process performance. One of the problems you have, particularly in things like marketing, and I'm going to bash on marketing for for a little bit. So forgive me if that's your choice, of, your profession of choice, or going to be your profession of choice. Um, I work with a marketing company. A lot of companies have actually made their ITIS departments part of marketing, under marketing's control, because you have this disconnect where marketing needs data and ISIT has the data. They know. The problem is these people don't know or don't realize that these people have the information they need, and these people don't realize why that information is important. So, for example, the company I worked for when I was working with a marketing company also did training, security training for casinos, and I did a talk at the gaming industry, the casino industry convention. And one of the things I pointed out, and this was in the early 2000s, was that here we're at this convention. It's nothing but people who work in the gaming industry. It's nothing but people who work in casinos and in management in casinos. And I told them, look, you don't know what you know. The information's out there, you just don't know, because marketing tends to be the jocks. Marketing tends to be people who, I always refer to them as the jocks and the cheerleaders. They're very dynamic, they're very personal, very outgoing, and the IT bot guys are the geeks and the nerds. They're what I affectionately refer to as propeller heads. I'm one of them. I can say that proudly, a propeller head. And so if once those guys there was a week long convention, I said, once you guys go home tonight, and if you call your IT people and they say, hey, we got this many more hits to our website, or this many more hits, this was before the days of apps, but this many more people hit our website. Cool. That's good information to know. But what can you do with it? Okay. And because these people, the propeller heads, don't know what that information is being used for, they're not giving more information out. And these people don't know what information is actually being captured. So I would tell them, look, you can go home and they'll tell you this information and you're not gonna be able to do anything with it. It's not actually information, it's data. It's just facts. It has no context. It's nothing you can do with it. So you have the next level where there's more communication. And so now the IT people can say, "Hey, we got this many more hits to our websites from um, from these cities." Okay, so now I can say, "Hey, these are other places. People who went, contacted their home office maybe, and their casino is hitting your sales site to see what services are going to be available." Okay, better information, right? Better data. Can you do anything with it? Not really. Possibly. I mean, you could go if you were selling a widget that the casinos wanted, and you can go back and say, okay, well, how many casinos are around Fresno? Okay, now I've got my this X many casinos to hit to find out what information they were looking for. So a little more information, closer to information, but it's still mostly data, just interesting bits. Um, where they needed to be at where they were, if they were actually really communicating and really getting processed data, and using it for improvement, would be, okay, these are the IPs of the hotels that these people were staying at. Okay, now my salespeople can go to those hotels and hang out at the bars and look for other people from these industries, and they can actually try and make sales calls. They can make connections. They can do something with the data. Now we've gone from data to information. We have actionable information. So it allows you to evaluate the data and put it in some context for the other people to work with. It also can help you look at, we're looking at the slide here, we're looking at evaluations occur at tier level, process level, and instance level. Process takes you look for efficiency. Okay, did the process work smoothly? Were we able to make it go faster? Were we able to make it go smoother? Were we able to reduce the number of people who actually had to touch the process, or how much were we able to automate? The second one is the instance level. Okay. On this particular occurrence, what happened? Okay. And that's where a lot of things fall down, especially again going back to marketing. Um, one of the where you have efficiency versus effectiveness. Think of billboards. Okay, one of the first things you learn in marketing is billboards are relatively cheap. You get a lot of people ostensibly seeing your billboard. Right, your billboard is out there. We have this many people driving up and down the 99. That's that many eyes on that billboard. Okay. And a lot of people will just say, well, just buy you a billboard, boom, done. Effective use of your money. Okay. It's an efficient use of your money. Pardon me. It is an efficient use of your money, because you're not spending a whole lot of money for the number of eyes on, right? Um, but is it effective? You have to know how much of your business is coming from that particular thing. Okay. How many people actually viewed pardon me, I'm going to make sure I hung up on that phone call. How many people actually viewed that billboard, came to your business? Was it effective? And so many times, if you're driving down the freeway and you look at a billboard, what's the point of that billboard? Is it really driving sales? And did they really have a way to measure that built in? So it might be efficient as far as money is concerned, but was it effective? If sure, we spent very little money to have this many people see our ad, but if no one turned around and bought anything, it's efficient, but it's not very effective. Okay, that's one of the things you're going to have a problem with. Okay, business process improvement, business process reengineering, and business process management. Three very different things. They all involve the same three things: reengineering, improvement, and management. There you go. How they work, however, are very, very different. So you'll hear them use the initialism. They're going to break it down: BPI, BPR, and BPM. You'll hear it a lot. Um, they take in data from customer satisfaction surveys. How much did we reduce cost? How much quicker did we make things run? Um, how did our quality of service improve? Um, in how much differentiation and productivity were increased or decreased. So these are some of the things you're going to run into. The first thing you're going to look at is business process reengineering. Reengineering is basically taking the existing process and completely reworking it. Okay, from top down. You're going to look at it. You're going to look at it from a manager's point of view and say, this is how we can fix this. A lot of times when you're working with a company, a new CEO comes in, the new boss, a new manager, whatever, we're just going to change everything. And we're going to change everything from the ground up. Um, it's, well, and we'll get to the pluses and minuses of that as we go. Um, it's a radical redesign. Okay. We're just going to come in, we're going to change from the ground up. Um, doesn't always work. It's a rare redesign, reengineering process that works. BPR is risky. It is widespread. It is generally from the top down, from the CEO, from the management level down to the employees. So you'll see this a lot of times in schools. Some of you are dual enrollment students. You will probably hear teachers moan and groan about this, where the school district comes in and says, "We're just going to change the entire way we do this," and the teachers just moan and groan about it. I do it too, because it's not it's from the top saying this is what we have to do now. Change everything. Change the way you do things, and we'll see what happens. Sometimes it works, not often. Then we have the second one, which is BPI, business process improvement. Basically, what that is the flip side. It is not from the top down; it's from the bottom up. It's from taking things from the worker's point of view, from what I always refer to as the sharp end of the stick. Okay, where we meet our customer or where we meet our output, and then working backwards to improve the processes as we go forward. So we take employee input. How can we do this more efficiently? And then seeing how it works. You define the problem. You define the problem and how you're going to measure how it's going to be improved. You measure, you analyze, you improve the process, and then excuse me again. I'm so very sorry. Um, and it's an ongoing process. It's not something you just boom, we're done. Let's go on. It's a constant state of improvement. As a matter of fact, kind of shows up right here. Um, it's a constant working towards the goal of always improving, always for looking for ways to improve efficiencies and effectiveness, and also I would lump in morale and your public image are also part of this. Then that leaves into our case study number two, where we're going to be looking at Chevron and how BPR, BPI, and BPM all were used at Chevron to improve. So again, kind of an overview of business process improvement versus restructuring is BPI low risk, low cost. Okay, we're not going to have a whole lot of problems um, because we're taking employee data versus BPR, very high risk. Either it's going to work or it's not, and and since you're re-engineering everything, it's going to be a high cost. Incremental change. Okay, it's going to go over time. You're going to do things in stages because you're going to again you're collecting that data. You're taking the input. You're collecting the data. You're seeing how it works, um, and also giving a chance to see how it affects other portions of your flow. Okay, you change this. How does it affect the step before? How does it affect the step after? Um, so it's an incremental change. The bottom up approach again. We start with our workers and we work upwards from there. BPR radical redesign. Okay, we're changing everything top down. We're looking at it from the management, from the CEO down, and restructuring things that way. It is very time consuming. You've got the planning on this. A lot of BPR. One of the reasons BPRs fail a lot of times is because it takes so long to plan to implement it properly. How am I going to put this into place? That by the time you actually have a plan, the situation's changed and you have to plan it all over again. So it tends to be very time consuming. BPI, quantifiable results. Okay, again, you're constantly looking at results. The impacts of BPR can be overwhelming. You'll have some of your best people will leave. They're a lot of times, and a lot of times, your best people can be engineered out of a job. So that can be a problem. Um, all employees can be trained in BPI. Um, the, one of the big changes in the automotive industry that took place in the 80s and 90s, due, quite frankly, input of Japanese cars and production models into the United States market, was the whole idea that all employees can look for ways to improve things. Was the rule in the Japanese automotive industry was even the lowest worker could stop the production line if they saw something going wrong. In an American production line at the time, that never happened. No, unless someone was actually getting hurt, you didn't stop the line. In Japan, if they just saw something was not working right, they could stop the line. And the whole idea is that everybody is there as a team to work on improvement. And again, BPR, very high failure rate. Okay, management. So business process management is how management is put into this. How do we use their technology tools to support continuous improvement? How do we do? How do we support the continuous change in modeling? I was involved with the County of Madera with a new project. It was my project. I won't mention it. I'm not going to beat my own drum. But we had to go through every department. The first stage was going through every department. Okay, what are your functions? How does paper move through these functions? How does this process work? When you get done with it, who gets it next? And then who gets it next? Okay, then why do we need this person here? Why can't we just go from here to here? Um, so it was a constant. You have to model the processes. You have to see what you're doing and question why you're doing it that way. And was not overly popular because again, people thought we were coming after their jobs. It wasn't. We were just trying to find ways for people to do their jobs more efficiently. And the pushback a lot of times you'll get is people think you're coming after their jobs. They will sabotage it. So you need to help them understand that it's a constant thing that we're trying to make things more efficient. A lot of software out there to do this. I mentioned on an earlier slide, Six Sigma is one of the things that's being used. You'll hear CRM. It's CRM is actually is a customer relationship management. Can also be used to streamline and automate workflows. You will occasionally see CRM being used that as well. Um, and then we'll be discussing in the reading business pressures and organizational responses. Um, Big business pressures. We'll go over the next slide. Organizational responses. We'll just jump over to them. Business pressures. You have market pressures. How things are changing. Um, when we're talking about, it sounds like this incremental changes work more effectively, but if the market switches quickly, it's not a great way to respond. You don't have a whole lot of time to respond. Changes in technology, changes in society, politics, or legal pressure. Pandemic is a perfect example. No one anticipated it, and we had to make quick and and massive changes to the way we did things. Businesses that were able to do that, businesses who are able to make those changes and adapt, survived. Many businesses did not. So that you lived through what we're talking about, some technology pressures, society, political, and legal pressures. The society had to change very quickly. Technology is always changing. Who can better leverage the technology changes gets more advantage in the market. So you have this figure 2-2, some examples of business pressures. The business pressure, the societal, political, and legal pressures are all going to be over here in blue. Our economic pressures, what do you do about powerful customers? If they're doing, do you bend to the will of your powerful customers or do you stand your ground? And then the changes in information. This section right here, I'm not sure if you see the where my mouse is, but information overload, huge. Um, and working, do you have it? Ah, so information overload is huge right here. Can cause what's known as option paralysis. I've got too many choices, so I can't make a choice. And that can be a huge problem. Managing that with technology is very, very important. Um, this social responsibility is becoming more and more of something that our corporations are having to deal with. In my opinion, it's a very good thing. So these are some of the pressures we're talking about that cause a problem. Market pressures, globalization. We live in global markets. We I won't say everything, but a lot of what we do are have global effects. One of the reasons, ag is a perfect example. We live in an agricultural area. You don't think of ag being a global market, but it absolutely is. It's one of the reasons why more and more of our ag land in the valley is becoming almonds. It's responding to global pressures. There's a huge demand for almonds, and so a lot of our land is being converted to meet that need. It is not that is not what I call it. While it is a edible product, it is a food. It is a commodity. It is being traded. Um, it is being sold overseas. A lot. If you look at a lot of the groceries in um, your local grocery stores, we are actually importing more and more of our food, even here in the valley. The valley used to be, almost everything was grown here. Uh, More and more of our crops are not being grown here, and we are importing them. So it is definitely a global market. Changing nature of the workforce. Again, workforce is constantly changing. We're seeing that again as a result of the pandemic. Coming out of the pandemic, we have more of our workforce is staying home. More of our workforce is not willing to work for the lower wages that they used to work for. And again, moving, excuse me, responding to some of our more powerful customers. One of the things, the changing nature of the workforce, just as an example, I saw an article just the other day. Yay, my pen just the other day on Twitter was someone had taken a video of San Francisco at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. And San Francisco, 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, you'd have people all over the streets while going into their offices. The streets would be packed. It was a ghost town. There were very few people there because most of the people were working from home. And that has changed a huge dynamic. Companies like Google has an entire complex. Um, and a lot of their employees started working from home when the pandemic hit, and Google has let them by and large. And so, since they didn't have to report to an office, and the real estate was so expensive in San Francisco, it still is. You had a lot of people moving out from San Francisco, which is one of the reasons the real estate in the valley grew, was because these people were moving away from San Francisco, moving into the valley where it was cheaper. They could actually afford to buy a house, and they could still work from home. And then you had people moving out of state, same thing. They could afford uh, much higher quality of life away from San Francisco, where it was so expensive. And then that in turn had an effect on us. Side note, sorry. So let's take a look at some of these, the breakdown on these. The globalization, integration, and independence of economic, social, and cultural and economic facets of life. Okay. IT has a huge responsibility in there, huge facet of that. Um, I I shudder to think what teaching school would have been like were it not for video conferencing. I don't know what we would have done. I don't know what we would have done if we didn't have access to inexpensive laptops, Chromebooks. I have no idea how school districts would have been able to respond. Um, it would have been very very scary. Um, So again, changes and rapid changes often. The workforce is becoming more diversified. As people from the valley, I have often taught in my programming classes that we have a voice that isn't often heard. Our small rural communities, in particular, um, live different priorities and different views than someone who grows up in an urban, more congested, more affluent area. And having women, single parents, minorities, persons with disabilities entering into the workforce in a larger way, and technology is allowing that. It's allowing people to do more in areas where they wouldn't have done before. One of the things that I'm actually looking forward to as we go forward is um, in IT. The It's what's referred to as an egalitarian type of people don't care really who you are as much as whether or not you can do the job. That used to be the case when we started putting people into offices. Those office dynamics started playing. We started getting some toxicity where, well, you can't do this. You're blah blah blah. You can't do this. You're this. We started getting away from that, and it was starting to poison my favorite workforce. We're seeing that kind of starting to go away as more as that can you do the job is coming back, and the need the the prejudices on against women, against single parents, against underrepresented minorities, and persons with disabilities are starting to go away. One of the big things I love about esports is that has nothing. It is a competitive a way for people to compete on an even playing field, and no one, you can compete with coming from any of these groups, and it's one of the reasons I enjoy it so much. So excuse me, is there still instances of toxicity? Oh, most definitely. But it is something the community is recognizing and working against. So, and again, as we mentioned, IT is enabling telecommuting more and more, especially after the pandemic. Powerful customers are a problem. Not really a problem, but they're something you have to respond to. If the customers are they know more about your product. They have a wider voice. How many restaurants, they live and die off of reviews, off of Yelp reviews, off of um, uh, social media, and how they are viewed beyond their little area. So, and having to deal with people being able to research the product. It's something they haven't had to deal with before. Technology, constant change. You have a new one and then new product, and it's replaced not shortly after. You come up with a new product, another company takes your ideas and runs with it. Maybe they do better. It can be a problem. And again, information overload, loads of information. Some of you are older. If you're like me and are old, um, back in the early days of the internet, there were technology writers who were saying, well, information is going to be the new currency. We're not going to have cash anymore. We're not going to have dollars. We're going to have people are going to be trading in information. And one of my favorite authors very rightly pointed out is like, no, no, information isn't going to be the problem. Um, the problem with the internet is not getting people to talk. The problem with the internet is going to be getting people to shut up, and being able to separate the important things from the unimportant things. And so, um, that information overload is really what happened. Um, and the difficulties of managing that data and to making wise decisions. You get bad data in, you're going to get bad decisions out. So being able to filter out what's called the chaff from the wheat, the good stuff from the bad stuff is important. And then legal, societal, and social pressures. Social responsibility is becoming more and more important in the world, and how IS and IT can help with that, help with compliance and government regulations. There is a lot, and the understanding and being able to comply with those regulations by automating them is huge. How we can protect against terrorist attacks, and I would include cyber attacks in those terrorist attacks. It may not endanger lives directly, but they definitely can endanger lives indirectly, as ransomware attacks on hospitals, and things like oil pipelines have made abundantly clear. And then, of course, ethical issues of when it is appropriate and ethical for certain things to happen. Social responsibility, green IT. We we take a lot of power. We produce a lot of carbon. Excuse me. So the designs and the facilities designs help with that. Um, we produce a lot of e-waste, and how that is managed is also very important. Recycling, what can be recycled, and is it being recycled properly? Because we can produce a lot of of trash. Hi, Max. That's Max. I don't know if you can see him or not, but Max is upset with me because I'm talking and I'm not talking. Hi, Bubba. I got to finish up here. The digital divide ran up against that during the pandemic. Um, it was a big push for one laptop per child. We pretty much got there thanks to the pandemic. And however, it still persists. The biggest thing we have now is not just that we have one laptop per child, but do we have a solid and inexpensive connection to the internet? Believe it or not, we have huge areas where we still do not have internet coverage. A number of communities in the valley are representative of that. But we also have a speed gap. Internet speeds in the United States compared to other developed countries are laughable. We don't have the speeds that other places do. So we are not able to do a lot of things that other countries are able to do. So that is something that needs addressing. Social responsibility and philanthropy. You've seen things like this, patients like me, Kiva, donors choose. I don't know what I would do without donors choose. I use donors choose a lot for classroom supplies. You know, I can't always rely on my school district to get me what I want or need for my classrooms. I have a couple of students who are in my classes who are in this classroom, and they can tell you I've got some cool stuff in my class that school district wasn't going to be buying me. I have a programming class. I have several programming classes that need to be able to read text on the wall, and projectors just don't cut it. You can't read what's being on there. So I had to get some LED TVs, and school district wasn't going to go buy it for me. So I was able to get people to donate to my classroom. Basically, Donors Choose um, is a Kickstarter for teachers. Um, so we have these different philanthropic things. I had companies, Ulta actually bought one of my projects out, pull it completely out. Ulta and Chevron did another one where they paid for everything. So it was wonderful. Compliance with government regulations, we have a lot of them. And IT makes it a whole lot easier. Be able to gather that data automatically, have that you can build your systems so that the information is being gathered as you go, as opposed to stopping everything and then figuring out what you need to figure out. You can gather the information as you go, gather your compliance data, gather your the data that you have to report on an ongoing basis. Protection against terrorist attacks, like we mentioned. Employees in military reserves are called to active duty. Information technology is used to identify and protect against terrorist and cyber attacks. Um, yeah, huge jobs for people who get into security, in cybersecurity. I'm developing programs for that. My son is actually in a program right now. Huge jobs in cybersecurity right now. Department of Homeland Security is the driver of that. And the biometric identity management program is part of that. The NSA is part of that. The CIA is part of that. The FBI is part of that. Military intelligence is part of that. So the DIA. Huge amounts of cybersecurity knowledge needed. Um, Ethical issues, we definitely have to address those. We have personal information, what our responsibility is for the information we gather, what how we monitor the use of technological resources uh, from our employees. Um, when is it right or is it wrong to gather particular information or apply particular information? Um, it is an ongoing thing, um, and the trade off between security and convenience. A lot of you have GPS on your devices. Your device is tracking you wherever you go. Um, when that was first being rolled out by Apple, was the first people that rolled it out, and there's a big uproar. People did not want them being tracked, themselves being tracked. So Apple got in some trouble. They turned all of that information off. but now people are turning it back on again because there are other functions that their phones or their devices will allow them to do that need that GPS, so that um, they give up the for that convenience they give up their information, and so then it becomes the ethical issue of how is that information used. So it becomes a problem. Organizational responses they have excuse me. I'm not going to bother you too, bore you too much with this stuff. This is a reading, but again, organizational responses made to order and mass customization. If you see that more and more often now, where you're not having to buy something generic, you're able to buy stuff that's made specifically for you and to your customer specifications online. And a good example of this is the next couple of business cases with B of A and cruise ships. And I can actually speak to the cruise ships because I went on one recently and I'll be going on another one relatively soon. They were actually very quick to embrace technology. They're very quick to, because it's all about service, it's all about convenience, and being able to have keyless entry into your room, being able to. I took my mother for her 80th birthday. We took her on a cruise to Alaska, and on the cruise line we were on, which was Princess, we all had these little medallions, and the medallions would allow you to key into your room, but they also had a tracker on the ship. So my mom might, I'll catch up to you later. If she needed to find us, there were TVs that were touch screens. She could go up, look us up, and it would tell her exactly where we were and how to get to us. We were able to use an app on our phone to order food to be delivered wherever we were from any restaurant on the ship. So the check-in process was much smoother than it was before. How we were able to do it in the past. So again, the cruise ship is a wonderful example of how technology has been embraced to improve their processes. There it goes. That was Finn, by the way. Finn is my wife's dog. Competitive advantage and strategic information. Again, being able to separate that chaff from the wheat, the unimportant information from the important information, to allow for good business decisions to be made. The business dash information technology alignment. One of the reasons I was in decent amount of demand was because of my because I had a bachelor's degree in information and a master's in business. I have a kind of a crossover. I'm able to see things from both lenses and see where one thing is important to the other. I mentioned the supply chain models, um, coming up with competitive strategy and strategic information systems. So again, looking at the markets and trends and where things might be going. Porter's competitive model. This is the different things that how you can. Well, let me go over here. Easier to see. Okay, so you have a rivalry here of your organization against the competing organizations, and then you have the external pressures on that. The threat of new companies coming in, the power of your buyer. Okay, how much influence does your buyer have on the cost and the price and your profits? The threat of substitute products. I mentioned that you come up with a new product, someone comes up with a similar one that might be cheaper or has more features to it, and then supplier power, the opposite of buyer power. If one of your supplies that you need is rare, your supplier has a lot of power over what you can do. And so, say you need, compound W to make your product. Both you and your competitor need compound W. Well, if you can negotiate a better price with your supplier, you're going to have an advantage over your competitor. But then there's going to be that pressure for your competitor to negotiate a better price as well. So there are a lot of things going on. So we talked about a supply chain. We also have a value chain, a sequence of activities through the organization's inputs that affect their outputs. Primary activities relate to the production and distribution of products and services, and then you have your support activities. So, what's the other stuff that you need to get things working? You always have to have supporting activities. We have a nice value chain model um, of where you're supporting activities. So, here are the things that you have to have. So, these are your primary activities. These are the things that make your business run. Okay, let me switch to my laser here. Okay, so these things right here make your business run. Okay. But for your things for your business to run, you need these. You need admin and management. You need HR. You need legal. You need recruiting. Okay. And finding this is what we refer to as overhead. These are the costs of doing business. This, um, all of this together, primary overhead. This is the things that you make your widget with. Okay. These are the things that make making that widget possible. Um, and how that is balanced can determine the successfulness of your company. Okay, your primary activities we kind of covered that in that chart. Um, the supporting activities again, kind of with the chart. Your infrastructure, accounting, finance management, human resource management. How your not just the human resources department hiring, discipline, firing, meeting compliance, negotiating insurance and benefits and what to offer for different jobs, but also dealing with your employees and their concerns. Product and technology development. Are you going to stay with the widget or are you going to try and develop widget 2.0? How much money are you going to spend developing new products or improving your existing one? And then procurement, which is getting access to the supplies you need to do your business. So different strategies to develop a competitive advantage, different strategies to develop um, a way of putting your company out in front of the other ones. Cost leadership. Can you manage your costs? Can you keep your costs down? That will maximize your profit. Differentiation. How different can you make your product from the other one? Okay, I keep going back to technology, but okay, I've got this smartphone. I've got this smartphone. Why is this one better than this one? What is the difference? iPhone versus a Google Pixel. What's the difference? Why would I want to buy an iPhone over a Pixel? Okay. What is the difference? Innovation. Okay. What's new? When the iPhones first came out, the big boy on the market was was the BlackBerry, and BlackBerry had a touchscreen. It's just you had to use a stylus. Where Steve Jobs, I already have my stylus right here. I personally didn't care for this as a stylus. I wanted more precision. I preferred the end the BlackBerry and then the Android when it first came out. The Droid, which was my first smartphone. Then operational effectiveness. How effective are your operations? How effective do you do things? And then are you customer focused? Believe it or not, there are very successful companies that are not all that customer focused. You probably run across them. And they still make a lot of money because they are very good on this. So people are willing to ignore the poor customer service. Um, Comcast comes to mind. Not to bash on Comcast, but they've been rated at some of the worst customer service in existence in the United States for years. But they are still the big kid in the market because they have operational effectiveness. They are the cost leader. They're really in many places the only game in town. And this is a chart reflecting that. Business information technology. Here's some characteristics of excellent alignment. Again, how we're going to integrate information technology into the structure of our business to maximize those things over here. How can we use it to reduce our costs, to differentiate our product, to create innovation? Um, and these are your six basic characteristics. And then, of course, we have our final um, case for Domino's Pizza and how they resolved it. So there's a rundown of this week's slides. Hope I didn't bore you to tears. I do try not to. Oops. Um, maybe Get that out of the way there. We'll switch over to the left hand screen, and there we go. Nope, that's not the screen I wanted either. That's the screen I wanted. Thank you. Okay. So those are your lessons for this week. If you are in group one, as a reminder, you need to have your video discussion due on Thursday. And then you have your chapter two quiz, tech guide quiz, and your PowerPoint project all due on Sunday. Group two, I'm sorry, I think I mentioned group one. Group two, you have your first discussion due on Wednesday. Group one, you need to have your responses due by by Sunday. Okay. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Again, usually takes me no more than 24 hours. I hope most of the time, and I will give you a response. So, if you have any questions, please reach out. If not, I hope you have a great week, and I will, or you will see me again on